Alright folks, in this instructional video we're going to show you how to build your own pond and waterfall. The first step that I always pay very close and the most important attention is the location of the pond itself. I like to pick a point in the yard that has the most visual from all rooms in the house as well as any outdoor area. This particular situation we're in now, there's a nice pool right behind you. The house is there and we're going to carry you inside and show you a bunch of different angles and determine exactly the best location. We think we found one, but we want to make sure, so we're going to step inside the house and take some quick looks. We've got some really nice visual points within the house, and this is certainly one of them. This is the hot tub that they have on a screened-in porch. And for our visual from where we initially thought, you can see right in between the branches of that maple, the waterfall will be coming out between some of the hedge on the back side. And I think this is going to be a great angle from here, so let's go inside and see how it looks from the house. Here we are in the kitchen, and you can see the way that the table and the chairs are located right next to the bay window. If you turn out or you're sitting on the far chairs looking out the window itself, you can see you're going to have really nice visual as far as the waterfall as it falls into the pool, as well as the water garden pool itself. So it's a good spot, from the kitchen area. All right, here's another visual that's real important. You can see they've got their outdoor furniture, so obviously they spend a lot of time here. And here again, it shows us a great angle. We've got the pool that's going to be visible. You don't want to have to worry about having every single step of the waterfall itself being perfectly, symmetrical with each angle, as long as you get a good glimpse of each step. And here you're going to have one of the final turns that goes into the waterfall plus the pool itself. So it's a great shot, from this particular spot. All right, you can see even from the far side of the pool, you've got a great visual. So I think we've got a perfect spot here. We've walked around the house, looked at 3 or 4 different locations, and now we'll go over there and take our measurements and paint it out and get ready to start digging. What I'm doing now is painting out a rough outline of the waterfall itself, and you can see I've actually taken the waterfall and have it nestled behind the shrubs. And that's probably one of the most critical factors in doing a waterfall installation. You don't want it to look like a set of steps falling into your pond, perfectly straight, perfectly uniform. You want to, you're trying to create a natural looking stream. So we're going to do an illusionary technique here of actually having the waterfall start behind these evergreen shrubs. And if you don't have any type of evergreen shrubbery to actually work with and doing your installation, you want to come back in and install some once you finish building your waterfall and your pond. But what we're doing is we're actually starting it at a slight angle, so that at all the angles in the house that we stopped and took those took those shots from inside the house, you want to actually be able to see where the water itself is originating. You'll only see it beginning and coming out from behind the evergreen shrubbery here. So whatever you do in your waterfall, don't make it coming straight into the pond and looking like a set of steps. Give it a slight angle from the beginning. If you don't have some evergreen shrubs, plant some kind of a shrubbery in front of it that's going to block it as far as visually you being able to actually see where the water comes from. What's going to happen here is you can also see we've got a slight slope going away from the pond itself. So once we come in here and we remove all this organic material, the homeowner has gotten a good mulch bed down, but that's the first thing you want to come in and remove is the organic mulch layer that's on top of the dirt right now. Because if you don't remove that, when you come in here and you build up this mound with some of your dirt, as this organic material decays in years to come, the waterfall itself will settle, and you're going to have problems with the liner moving and water starting to leak out of it. So remove that before you ever start. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and just roughly paint out where we'll have to come in and actually remove all this organic material. So there's just a good base for our waterfall. And then the pond itself will actually come in, and I want the pond itself to come within a foot of the patio, because what we'll end up and do with the stone placement here is we'll come in and make our excavation. The coping stone that will be going on the edge of the pool will actually come up and abut the top of the pool deck itself. making it very accessible for the homeowner whenever visitors come over or kids. Everybody wants to come and get as close to the water as they can. So we'll actually use this pool decking edge as the edge of our pool itself, so our stones will actually come up and abut those. So we're going to just do a nice little radius on our pond. Again, not keeping it perfectly uniform or perfectly oval or symmetrical. We're going to come in and do a little peanut or a kidney shape to it. So we'll give it just a little bit of an inset here and then loop back around and tie into our waterfall. The waterfall itself is going to be turned at a slight angle, so now we're ready to come in and remove all our organic material. Unfortunately, we've got a small stump and even a larger stump where I'm standing now that we're going to have to come in and work around. And that's one of the reasons I like to use some of these small excavators. So we're going to move in our equipment and start our excavation and show you how this step-by-step process goes. All right, this is probably one of the best machines we've ever come across. You can see this is just a small mini excavator. You can see the track width on it is no more than 30 inches. It comes in great in particular installations like this one where we've got a stump that's in the way. So instead of standing here and having a hand dig for a couple of days trying to get this stump out and all the other dirt, Stephen's going to be able to take this small excavator, spin around, and he's going to be able to remove all of this, and we'll be able to get all of the excavation done within a day. So for the money, it's well worth it to turn around and make an investment for a weekend rental in one of these machines. Well, we mixed tree roots and, yeah. Now that we've got most of our excavation done and we're just coming in and fine-tuning, we're ready to lay out our coping edge for our stones. And you can see this is the size stone that we're using, and of course that's going to be determined by the area you're in and what kind of rock you're going to use. But I'm going to show you how it can be done using a typical stone such as this. Basically, you can see our thickness on this rock is right around 5 inches thick. So what we're going to do then is I'm going to step back and I'm going to find my lowest point of the pond, which happens to be, you know, right in here on this end, which is closest to the pool deck or the concrete area. So what I want to do is come in and cut down 3 inches below here and make a level area around the pool itself. So what I'm going to do then is come in and cut down and just start a shelf at this area. Then I'm going to step back in and just use a standard 4-foot level. And once we start with this mark, we're going to excavate 4 feet at a time and keeping it level and just trimming it till we know that we've got this coping ledge exactly the same. Now what's going to happen is you're going to end up on some of these areas that are deeper in the ground because the elevation is dropping like this. You're going to end up with a little deeper cut on one side than the other, which is no problem. We'll just end up and add 1 or 2 rocks in that area instead of a single stone like this. But the reason that also that we're going to cut down this 5 inches is that when we lay the liner in, the liner will actually come in behind and come up on the back side of these coping stones. So that means whenever we go to fill the pond up, if I've got the liner curled up back behind it, I can fill that water level all the way up to the top of the stone if we wanted to, and we're not going to lose any water out of the pond or out of the liner. That's one of the first mistakes a lot of folks will make whenever they're doing an installation, is they lay the liner flat around the edge of the pond, and if you don't have those sides perfectly level, you're going to end up with the liner showing in several places. So by getting the coping shelf perfectly level, that's going to ensure that all these stones are going to be sitting level. But to further ensure it, we're going to curl the liner up behind it so that means we can actually fill the water several inches up on these stones. And basically that makes up for any mistakes that we've made in reading our 4-foot level all the way around the pond. You know, if I'm allowed to come up 3 inches on this rock, that means I can make a 2.5 inch elevation difference from this side of the pond to the other side of the pond and still be correct. So we're going to go ahead and cut down 4 inches from the top of here and start our excavation using our 2-foot level. All right. All right, you can see we've started our cut here, and as you can see the level, we're dead level now. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take this, now that we've got our level elevation started, and we're going to continue all the way around the perimeter of the pond, cutting in this coping shelf. And like I said before, what you'll be able to do with these particular stones that we're going to use, you can see how they're going to sit in the pond itself. So the liner is actually going to come up behind the rocks, and then when we fill the water level up, you're going to be able to come up several inches on top of the rocks themselves. So this is going to allow us to hide any kind of liner, and if we screw up on the back side of the pond, you know, we're going to be able to correct it by hiding our mistakes. Another little trick that you can do if you want to make sure that you're transferring the same elevation to the other side of the pond is come into the center of the pond and drive a stake down. And I'll get a hammer and I'll show you that once we drive this in, we're going to drive down until we get the stake perfectly level with this side. So Fernando, if you would hand me a hammer over there and let me drive this stake in. You can see now my level is even at this point. So we're going to come in and drive this down. We're just going to have a little center pin. All right, you can see how we've got our stake is perfectly level with this side of the pond. So now we're going to be able to take our level and swing it over to this side of the pond. And we've already started doing some excavation over here, so you can see right now that we're within about 1/4 of an inch. So now you've got this central pivot point in the pond that's the perfect elevation, or it's level with where we're supposed to be. So now you can rotate this level all the way around the pond, and if you get beyond the reach of the level itself, you can take a 2x4 and lay it and have it stretch all the way across the pond and set the 2x4 on top of it, or the level on top of your 2x4. So the bottom of your 2x4 can be the level point from here. And of course, if you want to get a little more high tech, you can do like what we've done previously, which is we took our tripod and you saw how we were shooting when we shoot elevations with it and make our marks. So basically, we'll come in and hold it at that mark and spray it with paint, and then we just come back in, and that's the mark that you see in here, the circular white mark, is where we've already laid out with the level itself. But if you don't have a level and you don't have access to a level, you know, you can easily do it with this 4-foot level. All right, you can see how we've gotten all of our coping leveled out all the way around the pool. Basically cut out 4 or 5 inches. This is going to allow us for a nice thick coping stone on this side. On the other side, we didn't have to cut it quite as much, so we won't have to use as thick a stone over there. We've gotten our waterfall cut in. We just came in and kind of layered it back. We didn't have a lot of elevation drop on this one, so I'm trying to compensate for the sound by widening the waterfall. Instead of the vertical drops, we're going to try to get it to, you know, increase in the width on the waterfall. So try to generate more sound in that method. So we've got that prepped out. So now we're ready to go ahead and pull in our underlayment. This is an 8-ounce non-woven geotextile underlayment materials. I really prefer using this over any type of old carpeting or newspaper or cardboard. All of those materials are organic and they're going to break down and rot. And not only will they rot, they're going to attract insects, and that's something you don't want. So we're going to come in and just spread this out and get a good covering over the pond, and walk it in. So the general purpose of this, although we're in some really good soft, non-rocky type soils, there were some roots that were penetrating from the side, so this is just going to give us a little buffer from those roots. We're going to lay it everywhere, and we'll let these extra pieces extend out. And once we get the liner and all of our rock work done, we'll come back in and trim it all out. One of the things that we do down south, and fortunately you folks up north probably don't have the problem with, is we have a lot of problems with termites, and in some instances if you put it around wood or old tree stumps or something, you can have problems with termites. So what I do down here, just as a prophylactic treatment, is I'll come back in with one of the granular insecticides and just liberally sprinkle it out on the bottom of the pond. And you can also see we also cut in a small little sump hole, and with the grade kind of flowing to the sump. And what this is going to allow you to do is when you come back in and do a pond clean out, you can wash everything to this small little sump hole and just drop your pump in it, and make the clean out a lot easier. But just liberally sprinkling this insecticide on top of the this underlayment, and like I said, being a fabric material, it's also going to allow it to soak in. But this isn't, this is actually is a petroleum-based material product, so it's not going to break down and biodegrade. But our insecticide is going to be able to be absorbed into the fabric somewhat. Our pond is 15 feet by 8 feet and 18 inches deep. So to determine the size of pond liner we will need, you want to measure your longest length, your widest width, and then add 5 feet to each one of those measurements. This additional 5 feet will allow for your 18 inches of depth and 1 foot of liner under each side where your coping stones will be laid. Now we've got our underlayment and got our insecticide treatment down, we're going to go ahead and roll in our liner. I certainly prefer using a 45 mil liner, which is what this particular product is. It comes in several different type of sizings, but they come up to a 60 mil. But 45 mils is really plenty thick-wise that you're going to need. It's as flexible, here at 75 degrees as it is 30 degrees. If you've ever tried to use some of the different types of liners, the HDPE or some of the older PVC types of liners, that was the hardest thing working with those during the winters. They were real stiff and brittle. So the EPDM pond liner, which is what this is extremely flexible, and you can see how it's just molding into the shape of the pond. Here again, we're going to do the same thing, come in and walk it in, making sure that we've got plenty of liner extending at least a foot beyond the edge of the pond. And then once we get to placing the stone in, I'll show you, how important that is to make sure you've got that extra foot of liner extending out. Now on the waterfall itself, you can see how the pond liner is actually lapped up and onto the waterfall itself. For our waterfall, I took a solid piece of liner that was roughly 15 feet by 7 feet and laid the one sheet of liner in place to ensure there were no laps. As long as you've got the waterfall or the pond piece up on the waterfall, and you've got the waterfall is going to lap over the pond liner, water can't travel uphill. So, we're just seeking to minimize any potential problems. and pull all your excess to the top side there, Fernando. So by pulling all our, you can see how the waterfall piece now laps over into the pond. You've got a nice vertical rise at this point, and as long as you don't back this pond level up and onto this higher elevation, you know, everything's fine. So you just need to know that this is as high as the pond level is ever going to be, or you could ever get the pond level would be to this point, because once you get above there, it's going to run between the liners and it'll seep out between the gaps. But you want to make sure that the waterfall piece is turned up and over, and there's no possible way for this waterfall to leak now. You've got a solid piece from side to side. You've got a solid piece of liner that comes all the way down and laps into the pond itself. So we know we've got that and taken care of positively. Now you can see how the coping shelves come into play, and we're going to come back in and lay rock with mortar directly on top of these. There are a couple of different ways, you know, that you can do this. Some people are hesitant, or they don't want to go to the trouble about, you know, getting the sides perfectly level and trying to use a level or a transit. And I'm going to show you, you know, the two ways you can lay your coping. One is just going to be using this single rock. So bring that over, Fernando, and we'll just see by doing a single layer of rock, all you're looking for is one rock that's actually be lining the edge of the pond all the way around. So by doing the single stone placement, you know, you certainly minimize, you know, the amount of rock, and it gives it a good, clean, neat look. If you don't want to go to the trouble to shoot an elevation, you just want to dig a hole, and you may have 6 inches of elevation different on one side of the pond, and you know you're lower on this end of the pond. What you can do is just come back in and just start at the bottom wall, and you're going to build the pond all the way up, because you don't have a shelf here. You're just simply going to build this wall all the way up. So you're going to come up and take the rock, start them from the bottom of the pond. You can either mortar these in, you can loose lay them like we're doing. We've finished, you know, both comparisons for you to look at. Let you make your own mind what you want to do. But in this wall, we had to build this wall up 2 feet high. We've got 26 rocks in this wall, 3 foot in length. We've got 2 stones in this, 3 foot in length. So you're covering the same amount of surface area, which is all you're looking for is on your coping. The problem is this may look fine now, but once the pond fills up, you get your plants, your water lilies, your fish in, these rocks basically, you know, discolor out and just disappear. So they're not even a thing that's going to be nice and a visual to you, just like doing a stacked rock wall in front of your house. You're going to see that all the time. These rocks are basically going to disappear. So that's a lot of work and a lot of tonnage of rock that you're going to have to supply for the pond. But this shows you how you can do a pond without coming in and shooting all these elevations, and what kind of work is involved versus if you want to go to the trouble and get your sides level. It's going to save you a little bit more money, you know, as far as the rock. And, you know, my personal feelings is that I think it gives you a much prettier effect on the pond itself. In our installation, we're going to lay this one row of rock because we've gone to the trouble to shoot these elevations and get everything right. So we're going to go ahead and start laying our rock and then start on the waterfall as well. So we'll go ahead and mix up some mortar and get started laying the rock. All right, we're going to let Stephen and Fernando and the guys go ahead and start laying some rock, and you can kind of see them going in the background, and as they get a little along, we'll stop and go back and show you what they're doing. But one thing we want to discuss, and of course since you haven't built your pond yet, is the proper selection of your pump. What I normally shoot for in a standard turnover ratio is and how often you want to turn and filter the water is I like to do roughly whatever your pond volume is once an hour. And that's not a magical number by any means, but it just gives you a little something as a rule of thumb. Our pond, for instance, is 10 by 8, so we've got 80 square feet. It's 1.5 feet deep, so we end up in total cubic footage on that. That means we've got 80 and 40, so we've got 120 cubic feet. So volume-wise in that pond, you've got 7.5 gallons per cubic foot. So if we've got 120 cubic feet in that pond, you know, that means, you know, we've got right at 800 gallons. So minimally by those standards, you know, you would only need a pond that's going to turn over 800 gallons per hour, which if you just simply want it to turn over for filtration purposes would be fine. But in our instance, you know, the homeowner, you know, they're not always going to be right out in the patio next to the pond. You know, they're not always going to be right here by the pool deck. They may be sitting up on the patio, or they may be up in the screened-in porch in the hot tub, and they're going to want to hear the water. So 800 gallon per hour pump isn't a whole lot of volume. So, you know, you certainly can increase that volume. You know, as long as you don't make it a raging river and put in a 12 or 15,000 gallon per hour pump, you know, and keep things within bounds, you can certainly increase that volume substantially above the 800 gallon per hour minimum, you know, for filtration. So what we've chosen to put in this pond is a 2,500 gallon per hour pump. Like we stated earlier, the way that our elevations were in this pond, we weren't getting a lot of vertical drop off of each one of these steps. So what we're going to do to increase the amount of sound that you're going to get from this water is keep the waterfall as wide as we can. So basically we're going to have a water channel inside of that fall itself that's going to vary between 2 to 2.5, and sometimes it may narrow down you know, to 12 to 18 inches. But that's something you can do by placing the rocks in the waterfall, and we'll show you how to do that. But more importantly, we want to talk about, you know, the proper type of pump and what sight and sound you're going to get from the water. Not only does the volume of the pond affect the size pump that you're going to choose, but also the size pump is also determined by how high you're going to actually be pumping the water. If you've got a hillside that starts at the bottom of your property and it runs up 15, 20, 30 feet, and you want to have water cascading down that whole hillside, that's not a problem at all. As long as you know that you want to select the pump that's going to be able to push the water to that elevation. You know, that's the biggest thing that you've got to keep in mind, is the higher that water is pushed up the hillside, the more energy it's going to take and the bigger pump is going to be required. So first things you want to ask in selecting a pump is how high are you going to be pushing that water above your pool level. So that's where you want to calculate what is called head, is the distance from the height of the pool to the top of the discharge point on the waterfall. And as long as you know you're only going to be 5 feet, or as long as you know you're going to be 20 feet, and you know the width of your waterfall is going to vary from 5 feet to 2 feet, that's going to help you determine how much flow that you want to see. So let's just say theoretically, you know, you end up with a waterfall that's going to be pumping 15 feet in height. And visually from a distance, you know, you weren't able to get it as close to the house as you like, so it ended up to be, you know, 100 feet or so from your house. So visually, if you came out and built a 2 to 3 foot waterfall, you know, that thing is going to appear to be, you know, this big from the house. So in order to keep everything in visual perspective, you're going to need to make that waterfall a minimum of 4 to 5 to even 6 feet in width. So as you increase the width of that waterfall, not only are you going to require more water to fill that space, you're also going to be affected by the size of the pump, and the size of the pump also determines the type of hosing that you use. So, you know, one thing leads into another, but as long as you get the right selection on the pump, you're going to 15 feet high, you're going to be, you know, 5 feet wide in your waterfall, so that means you're going to have a 3 foot width in the stream bed. So you know that it's going to take an area or a pump that's going to cover an area 3 feet wide. So to get that kind of a flow, you're going to need a pump that's going to give you probably 4,000 gallons per hour at a minimum at 15 feet ahead. So when you go to select a pump, you look at the flow charts, and you should have, every pump should have some type of a flow chart on the back of it or some type of a brochure that comes with the pump, and it tells you at 15 foot ahead you can expect X amount of water to be generated by that pump. So once you know those factors, then you're going to come back in and you're going to select the proper hose sizing. One of the main things that I had to learn when I started in the water gardening business was that the type of pumps that are used in water gardens are entirely different from pumps that are used in wells or irrigation systems. A waterfall pump should be a high volume but a low pressure type of pump. So you're going to be seeing amounts of head pressure that you normally wouldn't encounter. First thing we need to establish is a pump isn't a pump. In our instance, a waterfall pump which has been constructed especially for just high volume water movement is an entirely different type, an entirely different construction from a sump pump, a well pump, or an irrigation pump. In the latter two, the well pump and the irrigation pumps both require an amount of head pressure to be back on the pump themselves. They don't and can't stand to run under a high RPM or high volume standard. Those pumps will burn up quite frequently. I get a lot of people that come in that want to use some old irrigation pumps or some old well pumps, and I say fine, you can use those. Just know that they're going to burn up over a period of time. And the same thing with the sump pump. The sump pump is only intended to turn on periodically during flood periods, pump for a period and shut off, pump back again when time is called. But a good waterfall pump is a high volume, but it's a low pressure pump, meaning it can't push the volume of water that it can under maximum usage if you've got a lot of back pressure under it. And that's the first thing to understand, is making sure that you size your hosing correctly for the volume that your pump is going to be moving. I've seen a pump choke down as much as 30 to 50% because the homeowner installed the wrong size hosing going to the waterfall. And a rough rule of thumb is, in which I use in our construction, is any time that I deal with a volume pump that's 1,000 to 1,200 gallons, I use an 1.25 inch hosing. And again, the type of hosing is going to be a larger than even the discharge on the pump itself. Like I said, the pump size is going to be determined by the diameter of the hosing that you're going to be able to move this volume of water through. Sometimes you can push this 1.25 inches up to 2,000 gallons per hour, but normally once you get above 1,200 to 1,400 gallons per hour, you need to move up because you're building up too much pressure inside this hosing. So you need to step up to a 2-inch hosing. And here again, this looks like a really big hose, but you've got to keep in mind these pumps are not constructed to build or to work under any type of back pressure. A 2-inch hosing is going to suffice for a volume from 2,000 to 45 to 5,000 gallons per hour is really pushing a 2-inch hosing. So I like to make the size selection on the 2-inch hosing from anywhere from 2,000 to say 4,000 gallons per hour. Here again, you've got a large diameter in this hosing side. It's going to allow for a large volume of water to be used, but yet it's going to keep the friction loss within the piping and also the pressure that's going to be built up to a minimum. And anytime you get above 5,000 or greater to 10,000 gallons per hour, you need to step up to a 3-inch hosing. Here again, this looks like a tremendous size hosing, but I can assure you, if you come in and you try to install a pump that is going to be pushing 6 to 7,000 gallons per hour on any smaller type hosing, you're not going to get the flow that you should from that pump itself. So always keep those factors in mind. It is to size your hosing to the size of the pump that you're going to use. And there are several different varieties of pumps that are available. You know, there's some more economical type, which are these epoxy type pumps. Normally, you know, you're going to get probably 18 to 24 months, you know, if you're lucky, out of these type pumps. They're not intended for, well, they are intended, they're intended for full 24-hour, 7-day-a-week running, but normally, because of the construction, it's not as heavy a material, or the inner workings of the motor aren't quite as good. You know, you can get, you know, if you're lucky, a couple of years out of these. You know, the only thing that I dislike about these particular pumps is the size of the screen intake that's on the bottom of the pump. What happens is anytime you've got this type of a screened inlet, you're certainly limited by the amount of the debris that this type of pump is going to handle. So either you got to put it in some type of a pre-filter system, or either you're going to be out there fairly often cleaning with some type of a mechanical type filter to remove the debris so this pump doesn't get stopped up. If I'm in an instance or an installation that I can really use it, I love these heavier stainless type pumps. You know, normally these pumps come with a 2 full-year warranty on these. What I love about them is the size of the opening. You can see that you've got, you know, roughly an inch opening in the bottom, so that means you know, any small leaves, you know, any algae, any really smaller, finer particles aren't going to get stopped up. So you know, these pumps are going to be able to pick up and pass a lot larger solids than these smaller economical type pumps are. Here again, you know, they're twice the cost, but you know, that's where you've got to, you know, you've got to weigh that cost benefit ratio. Do you want to go out every you know, couple of weeks or even couple of days sometimes, depending upon how much of an organic load you've got in your pond, and have to be cleaning filter pads, or do you want something that's going to be able to handle a little bit more solids? Dealing with some of the filters that you can use in these pumps, you know, some of them are as simple as this filter pot situation. And here again, one of the main factors of any type of a good filter is you shouldn't have a particulate type of a filter on any of these pumps. Anytime you see a filter that's got some kind of a sponge or a real fine filter media, you know, your filtration shouldn't be like a cleaner on your carburetor of your car. It shouldn't be catching every really small fine particle. Not only is it going to be a maintenance nightmare, you're going to be out there, you know, day after day, you know, probably every day, having to clean those filters. And it's not a very good biological filtration system. The type of pads that I like to use are ones that are real coarse. They're extremely porous. You know, you can actually see light through these filter pads. It's fine enough so that it's going to catch the larger particles that would stop up, you know, the intakes of these smaller pumps, but yet it's going to allow enough water to pass through here that you're going to be able to get a culture of these nitrifying bacteria to grow in this filter media. So that's the key to a good filter is having a media that isn't going to be stopping up on you, you know, and you're going to have to be out there every day. If you're cleaning your filters every day, you know, you've definitely got problems. You need to come back in and change out that filter media and redesign your filter system. The way that these pumps work on the smaller type or the larger pumps like these epoxy types is I'll actually take the pump and sit it down in the pot. And then I've got my discharge tubing that comes through there, but what we'll do is we'll actually take the electrical cord and go ahead and pull it through, because you don't want to have to be out here pulling this cord out every time you want to change your filter pad. So as long as you feed your cord through first and then come back in, and I'll actually attach the pump to this 1.25" hosing. So you can see now what we've got is the pump that's sitting in the very bottom of the pot. The hosing, or the electrical connection, is coming out. We've got our discharge pipe that comes out of the center. So now all we do is we simply take our little round filter pads and just push them over the pump itself. So now you can see that all of the water has got to pass through these filter pads to get to the bottom intake of the pump, and then it's discharged going out to the waterfall. So, you know, for a smaller pump, which this is a approximately 2,500 gallon per hour pump, these filter pads, you know, work fine. Once you get up into the larger pumps, you're going to have to get a larger type of container that's going to be able to handle the larger volume. If you turn around and try to put a 5,000 or 6,000 gallon per hour pump in here, you know, it's much difficult to make this system work. All right, we've also got another type of filtration system, which are these skimmer boxes. And they're probably, I bet there's probably 10 or 12 different manufacturers and different styles of skimmer boxes. A lot of them attach to the outside of the liner. Some sit inside of the liner. I particularly prefer to keep my skimmer boxes inside of the liner. You know, to me, you're just minimizing the problems that you're going to have. If you come in and cut that liner and attach it to the faceplate of these skimmer boxes, you know, hey, chances may be 1 in 100 that you're ever going to get a leak, but there is that one, and the way my luck goes, I'll be that one. So I'm not going to tempt fate. I just dig the liner out, make a little recess, and we'll actually sit the skimmer box on top of the liner. You know, you can do it either way, but I prefer to play it on the safe side. The beauty about the skimmer boxes is the fact that you have this skimming action that's going to pull a lot of the surface debris off. You know, everybody's familiar with the way the swimming pool has the little skimmer boxes around the edge of the pool, and you're continually pulling surface debris into the boxes. Unfortunately, just like in a swimming pool, you're not going to get all of that debris sucked into the skimmer box. But since we're dealing with a much smaller area than a swimming pool, you know, some of these guys like to say you can remove 60 to 70% of the debris inside your skimmer box, which I probably would agree with. You've got a much smaller area, so it really works out a lot better. If you look on the inside of these boxes, not only you can see how the water is going to travel in. The pump sits to the back side, and this particular brand actually has a skimmer tray that you can empty the leaves out. Easy to clean, easy to remove, easy to reinstall. It's got a really unique feature in that it has a center port that you can actually come in and sleeve a UV light inside. The UV light is a sterilizer. It is no kind of a filtration system whatsoever. It simply kills the algae, and that's how it keeps the water clear. So a UV light does a good job as a clarifier in keeping the water clear. So if you get into a situation where you've got a lot of fish load, you don't have a very good biological filtration, you can look for some of the units like this one that you can actually sleeve in a UV light. Once it comes in through the skimmer, it has to pass through the skimmer tray. It flows through the little channel that has the portal for the UV opening. It then has to pass through these small filter pads. Here again, if you've got a pump that has the smaller openings in the bottom of it, you know, like the first unit we showed, and you're going to have problems with that getting collected with micro debris, then these are a great addition. You know, the only thing you have to keep watch on is if you let these pads get too dirty, it's going to reduce the flow, and the volume of water inside this pump pit is going to start dropping, and you run the risk of this pump actually starting to run dry. So what I prefer to do is, if I've got one of the better quality stainless pumps like this that has the larger opening, I simply remove these pads and don't use them at all, so that the pump itself is actually down in the bottom. If you get the small micro debris passing, you know, through the skimmer basket, it's simply just going to go to the pump and be picked up and passed out. So you can see how, you know, how handy these skimmer boxes actually are. They can serve a very useful function in making the pump easily accessible. Anytime you need to come in, maintenance the pump, you know, it's not out in the pond, which happens with some of these smaller pot filters at times. You know, you've got to drop them down in the pond, and it's an effort to reach down in there and fish them out. So all in all, it's a better maintenance technique, as well as something that also allows the pump you know, to be recessed and handle the flow and skimming the debris off very well.
Okay,
A little bit more, yeah, come on. All right, you can see we've got most of our coping rock installed. We use some really nice big flat smooth stones. We don't want to overpower it with a lot of small stones. That's one thing that I have paid a lot of attention to over the years. It seems like if you can come back in and replace, you know, 2 or 3 stones with 1 stone, you've made an improvement. It doesn't make the pond look so busy, and it doesn't look like it's ringed by a necklace. So try to use some larger stones when you're doing the coping. Also, one thing that we strongly believe in is keeping the hosing inside of the liner. You can see how we've laid the hosing down, we put our mortar down, we put the rock on top of it, and it's running all behind the stones. And we've even got it channeled and going up to where our little curtain fall box will be. Here again, this is just another preventative measure. It's like not wanting to cut the liner and install the skimmer box outside of the pond. You know, just doing a little precautionary measure like this, if this hosing were to get a hole and begin to leak, you know, where's the water going to do? It's only going to return back to the pond itself. So it's just another safety factor, and it's something that I strongly believe in. You know, it's just that ounce of prevention, a little saying here. But you can see we've got the waterfall is cut out, and we're ready to start laying our stones in the waterfall. What we have used in this particular installation is a curtain fall box, or one of the ball fall boxes. There's several different names and nomenclatures for these pieces. You know, we've done probably 500 ponds, and I don't normally use these because I've done enough. I can build a pond without using the curtain fall box, but this is usually the hardest thing for somebody that's just doing some of their first ponds to really visualize and figure out how to do is get the origin of the waterfall. So we've, you know, gone ahead and chosen to use it on this particular installation. Here again, the connection is in the front of the box. And that allows us to push the water. Again, it has to rise up, and by the time it gets to the top of the box, you're not going to have that washing and rapid movement. It's good and even, and then it's going to spill out over into the waterfall. We'll come back and start laying our stones, but we're going to hide this box so that you're not even going to know it's here. You know, we're going to come back in, rock in front of it, put a nice lip rock out to the top side. It's going to fall over and go into our stream and go back into the pond itself. All we've got to do is get this waterfall rock laid, and we'll pretty well be done. Well, folks, you can see that we've got our project completed. Waterfall turned out really nice. We got some great sound from it. Here again, just reiterating the fact that if you don't have a lot of vertical height to deal with, you can generate just as much noise by widening your waterfall and getting a couple of gentle drops like we've got in the fall in this instance. The only thing we've got left to do is come back in and add a water lily, some bog plants, a few fish, and the homeowner has already got some plants selected to go around the pond. So, this project's pretty well done. But, as you can see by the step-by-step method and fashion that we showed you, a project like this can easily be done, in 3 to 4 days without any problem at all. Just a little bit of proper planning and forethought into the project. It could be something simple and easy that you can do yourself. So why don't you go ahead and try it?
There's water in the brook running down to the stream. There's a bullfrog on the bank, baby, singing songs to me. There's fish down underneath that water, baby, saying, oh man, you'll never catch me. When water falling down from the sky up above makes everything green, makes my flowers fall in love. Saw a thorny Mr. Rosebush, baby, saddle up to Miss Foxy Glove. Water, oh, cool, clear water. Water running down the mighty Mississippi. Oh, water. There's some down there in Mobile. Water, baby, come on, give me a sip. Water in the river runs down to the bayou. There's a house on some stilts down there, baby, where